Pela primeira vez aqui no canal, né? A apresentação que nós temos aí foi na conferência do ano passado, conferência do Summit do ano passado, e na terça-feira, dia 21, nós vamos estar recebendo Martin Moe, e vamos sair sempre colocando mais um monte de pessoas trazendo para vocês conteúdos exclusivos aí para o nosso hobby. Hoje nós temos um convidado muito especial. Hoje nós vamos estar recebendo o Matt Pedersen. O Matt ganhou notoriedade, principalmente aqui no Brasil, em relação à sua publicação sobre Bangai Cardinal, né? Eu tenho esse livro já há muitos anos, é um excelente guia e fico muito feliz em poder estar conversando aqui com o Matt ao vivo aí, como nós sempre temos feito. So guys, welcome to our channel, and this is another video from this series. We already have received a few celebrities around the world, and also Brazilians, including Mark Callahan, Malev. Next Saturday, we're going to have Julian Sprung for the first time on the channel. We already had in a presentation from Tamid from the Conferência, from the aquarium conference that we have annually here in Brazil. And on the 21st of July, we're going to receive Martin Moe. So it's quite a pleasure. I'm quite lucky to have received these guys. If you're not subscribed to our channel, please do so. And tonight we are going to have Mr. Matt Pedersen.
Hello.
Matt, thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Então, nós vamos estar aí trazendo vários assuntos e o Matt é o nosso grande convidado. Como já falei para vocês, o Matt é o editor sênior da Coral Magazine e é o editor-chefe e publicador também. E é da revista Amazonas. São essas duas guias que são revistas especializadas aí nos nossos hobbies do aquarismo. Então as duas. So, as mentioned, Matt is the senior editor from Coral Magazine. I breathe for a long time, right, Matt? Maybe 5 to 6 years? 10 years already.
Yes.
Oh man, time passed by.
It does.
And for Amazonas, also 10 years?
Well, so we launched Amazonas, the English edition, and at the end of 2011, so technically it would be 8 years.
Então,
and now I'm one of the publishing partners.
Oh, that's nice. So you're going to make the publishing over there in USA?
Oh, we've been publishing this for since 2012 in the United States.
I mean, the printing is in USA?
Yes.
Oh, I thought that was everything come from Germany. So
We can talk about that. It does.
Okay, so we go inside that.
Yes.
Então, o Matt, ele já é o sênior editor, o editor sênior da Coral Magazine já há 10 anos, e a Amazonas tem 8 anos. E ele também tá desde o princípio aí. A edição, a publicação já é feita já nos Estados Unidos, mas ele vem da Alemanha e a gente já vai estar entrando nesse ponto aí. Eu estou tentando aqui, pessoal, abrir o script que a gente fez aqui, mas está meio complicado no meu computador, não sei por quê. Matt, I'm just trying to open the script, but my computer, I don't know why it's not working properly.
That's okay. I have it in front of me. I can share it. I can share it with you if you would like. That'd be helpful.
I'm looking forward to see if it can work out.
I could.
But anyway, I'm going to say the questions in Portuguese, and that's the beginning. The beginning is always the same for everyone. Mm-hmm. So, Matt, tell us, Matt, nos conte então, por favor, como que começou a tua trajetória no aquarismo, como que tu entrou para esse hobby e como foram os seus primeiros tanques. Conta essa história para nós. So Matt, let's start from the beginning. Let's tell us about your trajectory, how you started in the aquarism as a hobby, and your first tanks, your first history. How was that about?
So when I was 5 years old, mm-hmm. my brother and I received a 10-gallon aquarium, so about 37 liters, mm-hmm. for a Christmas present. and we both, it was the family Christmas present that year, a freshwater fish tank.
Com 5 anos, o Matt e o irmão dele receberam um aquário de presente de Natal. E esse foi o primeiro aquário que eles tiveram. Ele tinha 5 anos.
So, we had that tank for a number of years, and then when I turned 10, I turned that into my first saltwater aquarium. My brother was not that interested, but the fish bug had hit me.
So you turned a 37 liter. You started with 37 liter saltwater tank.
When I was 10 years old, 37 liters, yes.
And how that went by?
It didn't go well.
Então, com 10 anos, ele pegou e transformou o mesmo tanque em um aquário salgado, um aquário marinho. E, como já esperava, não deu muito certo aí o aquário.
So, it was a 10-gallon aquarium, crushed coral gravel, under gravel filter. All we did was drain it, reset it as a saltwater, and we had a yellowtail blue damsel, tomato clownfish. I think my third fish was a French angelfish.
A French angelfish?
Well, juvenile.
Oh, okay.
and then, so I want to say within another year to 2 years, I convinced my parents to allow me to get a 30-gallon. So more like 120 liters. And I ran with that for a number of years.
Os primeiros peixes que ele tinha lá como aquário salgado foi uma donzelinha, aquela yellow belly. Ele teve também um casalzinho de tomate e, para ajudar, um paru. E o paru, só que era um paru pequenininho. Então, depois ele acabou convencendo os pais deles a trocar para um aquário de 100 galões, 120 litros, de 30 galões. Okay. And how long they lived? They had the chance to move for the new tank or not?
Well, when I was 13, I started working in the pet trade. I worked for I don't know how you will translate this easily, but it was a company called the Great American Pet Mobile. And it primarily was a delivery company that delivered dog food and cat food to people's homes. This was long before internet and e-commerce. So I started there when I was 13, and I'll let you translate that before I keep going.
Já com 13 anos ele começou a trabalhar numa empresa que era especializada em fazer entregas de rações, de coisas para cães e gatos. E isso foi bem antes da internet. When was that, Matt? Which year?
89, 90?
89, nos anos 89, 90 e pouco antes da internet.
So, they had a menagerie, a private group of animals that were their personal pets that they would take around to birthday parties and schools. And so my job was to come in a couple times a week and take care of the animals. And that was kind of how my life in the pet trade started, was with this small company.
And which animals were that?
Everything from like a macaw to sulcata tortoise to hedgehogs. Nothing at the time very exotic, but in the grand scheme of things, nothing that unusual.
But that's quite nice. And you mentioned to me you were 13, so you were allowed to work, or it was more informal because
it was technically not legal to work.
Okay.
It was a family friend, you know, so like babysitting, you know, your 12-year-old child babysits younger neighbor kids or something. It was kind of like that. And then when I was 14, I found a job working at a local pet store, and I worked in the aquarium trade in the retail side of things until I was well through high school, so about 18.
Com 13 anos, então, ele começou a trabalhar para essa empresa, e as obrigações dele eram cuidar dos animais. Eles tinham animais que levavam em festas e coisas assim, essa empresa que ele falou, como, por exemplo, araras, outros animais que não eram nada incomuns, mas faziam um bom sucesso. Ele tinha 13 anos e os proprietários aí eram amigos da família, então ele conseguiu trabalhar com 13 anos, mas não era nada formal. E depois, com 16 anos, ele acabou entrando formalmente em uma empresa do ramo. And which city was that, Matt? You didn't mention to us where you were born.
Chicago, Illinois. For the large, suburb, but Chicago.
E isso daí era lá em Chicago, né? Ele nasceu lá. And you still live over there?
No, we live Duluth, Minnesota now. So Duluth, Minnesota, for people, anyone who's familiar with our geography here, it's the westernmost tip of Lake Superior. It is the innermost. It is considered the most interior ocean port in the United States.
That's nice. Are you near Bulk Reef Supply?
Near who? Oh yeah, Bulk Reef Supply is about 2.5 hours south of here. Live Aquaria, who many people are familiar with, is about a 4-hour drive, 3.5-hour drive east of here.
Man, that's far away. But they are also in Minnesota, right?
Live Aquaria is in Wisconsin, so we crossed the border for that one.
Então ele morava, foi criado lá.
The little one, the offspring. Ethan, say hi to Brazil.
Hi. Hi, Ethan.
This is my son, Ethan. He's 10 years old.
10 years old already. You already have your own fish tank, Ethan?
I have my own frog tank.
Frog tank? Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
Vivariums.
Yes,
we have those as well. I didn't mention those.
I used to have a jellyfish tank.
Okay, jellyfish is nice.
And I went to an aquarium building competition.
Yes, yes, he did.
Ooh. And I won second place for my nature one.
Yes, the Biotope Aquarium. Yeah. I believe it was.
That's nice. And what do you feed on the frog? What do you feed a frog?
Fruit flies.
Just flies.
Yeah, we culture fruit flies.
Oh, I see it. Oh, that's nice. And you can catch you can get the frog in the hands, or they just stay in the terrarium?
Do you hold them, or do you?
You don't really hold them a lot. But yeah. Do
they bite, or they're angry, or what?
No.
No, they're dendrobates, poison dart frogs.
Oh, that's a nice pet for children.
Yeah. They're not toxic. They're captive friends.
Yeah, just don't take a beat from them. Ok. Então, pessoal, esse daí é o Ethan. Ele tem 10 anos, ele é o filho do Matt, né? E ele tava me contando ali que ele tem sapinhos de estimação. Antes ele tinha um aquário com alga viva. E daí ele tá me contando que ele ganhou uma competição lá de montagem de aquário. Ficou em segundo lugar.
If pickleball was open.
You can, but I'm obviously doing this. All right.
Bye, Ethan.
All right. There was a question in all of that.
Então, a gente estava falando que o Matt, ele nasceu em Chicago, né? Mas hoje ele mora em Minnesota. Minnesota é o mesmo estado do Bulk Reef Supply, mas mesmo assim está a 4 horas de lá. E a Live Aquaria é outra empresa bem famosa, só que está em Wisconsin, está umas 4 horas ali. Eles fazem caetomorfa, eles vendem copépodes, eles vendem rotíferos. E estão mais ou menos próximos dali. Ok? So you started working on the trade, and you mentioned to me you were working formally with 16 and 17. And by that time, you already started raising fish because that's your trademark, man.
No. I didn't get to fish breeding really. Marine fish breeding came much later in my life.
Mm-hmm. How late?
My late 20s, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
As far as really focusing on marine fish breeding, I want to say my late 20s. I'd have to do the math in my head, but late 20s. Just thinking that's mid 20s.
Naquela época lá ele ainda não criava peixes, né? Porque essa é a marca registrada do Matt. O Matt depois vai mostrar o porão dele, que era cheio de aquário. E isso é uma coisa bem bacana aí que a gente vai estar vendo depois. E ele não tinha começado nessa época ainda a ir a fundo nessa questão de criação de peixes. Ele começou mais na metade final dos seus anos 20, né? Então, 25 a 30 anos aí que ele começou a ter.
Okay, so to circle back a little bit, I left the retail trade, the retail aquarium trade, and moved into the wholesale trade, and that was my first real experience with freshwater fish breeding, where we wholesaled, but we also produced fish that we sold, and then also worked with partners. And so I was running this cichlid hatchery and wholesaler in my early 20s until I got an actual job in my profession. And I know one of the questions you had raised was our education and background. So pretty much I went to school for marine biology with the intent to study marine aquaculture. And I'll stop there and let you catch up.
Ele foi para a universidade para estudar a biologia marinha com o objetivo de ele ter uma aquicultura, né, de criar peixes, uma piscicultura. Mas isso acabou não acontecendo. Ele, com uns 16 anos, ele começou a trabalhar para um distribuidor. Ele saiu da revenda para ir para a parte de distribuição, onde ele se envolveu com a criação de ciclídeos.
Okay, so I ended up not getting a degree in marine biology. That is the short of it. I really wanted to study marine aquaculture, and it wasn't really offered. I was a little bit ahead of. I feel like I was ahead of the curve, ahead of my time, as far as being that specific in what I wanted to do. So I ended up going back home, going back into that wholesale position, and went back to college locally, and ended up, my degree is multimedia communications, which is basically web design, software development, what we're doing right here. That is my actual degree. I have an associate's in applied science in multimedia communications. That is my formal training.
Então ele acabou não continuando, né, não concluindo a biologia marinha porque ele não tinha uma especificação específica em aquicultura. Ele retornou e foi estudar multimídia, né, sendo assim, web design, comunicação visual. E ali foi onde ele foi. Pelo menos isso foi muito útil, né, Matt? Está sendo muito útil aí como editor das revistas, né? So at least that's quite useful because, well, you're the main editor and publisher from it.
Well, so what ended up happening was I had my my professional career after finishing college was as a Flash developer, at the time Macromedia and then Adobe Flash, and so that was my full-time income. That was my full-time job.
And you might hate Jobs, right?
What was that?
You might hate Steve Jobs then.
Well, no. So
he just made a quitting the flash thing.
So I did that, and there was another period in there where I was between two of those professional positions, where I went back to the retail aquarium trade while looking for an ideal job, and that was the point at which I did some importing as well. So I kind of had through the course of my life, I had exposure to all these different aspects of the aquarium trade, but it was never my full-time avocation, my full-time job. I always had my profession.
The one you mentioned to me that you have started doing some imports. So when you came back for the wholesale, it was your own company?
No.
Então, o Matt, ele relatou que ele se formou com isso, ele começou a trabalhar como um editor de Flash, aquele programinha antigo, aquela plataforma antiga, aquele suporte que tinha. E só que ele acabou voltando também para o ramo, né, para o ramo de distribuição, onde ele se envolveu com importação de animais. Aí eu perguntei para ele, então, Matt, a empresa era tua ou tu voltou como empregado? So, Matt, you came for your own company or you were an employee from someone?
Employees at that point, always working for someone else. So to get you up to where I ended up working for Coral, basically when I started working in my mid-20s at that retailer again and doing a little bit of importing for them, and just handling the paperwork and also trying to run maintenance business and all these things they wanted me to do. When I left that position, it was for a really good paying professional job as a software developer. And I did that for a number of years. But at that point, I had always had an aquarium somewhere, and there was maybe 6 months in there where I didn't. And that it was at that point where I met my wife, and we moved in together. And I was still working at this last pet store, and she said, could we have a pair of clownfish, or wouldn't it be nice if we had a pair of clownfish? And I said, well, I can do that. And that was what really got me back into it, really hardcore. And within that year was where everything kind of just took off.
Então, depois que ele saiu dessa empresa, ele sempre teve um aquário junto com ele, né? E ele saiu para um emprego muito bom como desenvolvedor na parte de comunicação visual. E lá ele conheceu a esposa dele e veio da esposa dele essa proposta de ter um casal de palhacinho. E ele disse, não, consigo fazer isso sem problema nenhum. E eles compraram um casal de palhacinho, e foi aí que começou a entrar, presumo eu, essa parte aí de criação de peixinhos novamente. And I suppose that's how you started back with the breeding.
And she swears she never asked. She swears she never asked for those clownfish. So, yeah, that's what got me into breeding. And being an adult, having resources, having financial resources, having a space that was my own. My parents limited me and said, you only get to have these 2 or 3 aquariums in the kitchen. That's it. So having that own space of my own, and a wife who at the time was very supportive. We didn't have kids at that point. And so that allowed me to do a lot of breeding work, and really to start to learn the craft. That was in just 100 gallons of total water that I did. It's really amazing to think that I was more productive when I was younger and had a smaller amount of space to play with.
Então, isso modificou bastante, porque quando ele era criança ele tinha um espaço limitado, era o que os pais dele deixavam. Agora, ele sendo um adulto com a esposa dele, ele tinha uma esposa que permitiu isso, ele tinha espaço e ele tinha recursos para desenvolver essa questão que para ele interessava, que era a criação dos peixinhos, né? E foi aí que fez toda a diferença. E uma coisa que deve ter sido bem engraçado, né, Matt? Porque eu lembro de ter visto a foto do teu porão cheio de aquário. Então eu fico me perguntando como deve ter sido a razão da tua esposa, como deve ter sido a reação da tua esposa quando ela permitiu um aquário e tu montou aquele porão. I was just saying, Matt, that I remember seeing a picture from your basement, and man, there was full of aquariums and full of fish tanks, and I just was wondering, your wife let you had a pair of clownfish, and I imagine her reaction when she saw so many aquariums over there.
Well, yeah, that came later. That was once we moved to Duluth, and we in Chicago we lived in a 750 square foot condo, so an apartment that you own. And we had neighbors on top of us and to the sides of us, you name it. We were crammed in. We had to find a place to park our car every night. So when we moved to Duluth, one of the qualifications for the house we ended up buying was that it had an unfinished basement. And I told Renee, I said, I don't really care what we do upstairs, but the basement's mine. I want control over the basement. And that was part of our agreement as spouses.
I recently moved to a house. It's actually 9 months. I also used to live in an apartment, and I just got myself my own basement.
There you go.
And now I just put some fish things over there.
That's how it starts. That's how it starts.
Então, o Matt estava me falando ali que eles moravam num apartamento, né? E quando eles mudaram para casa nessa outra cidade de Duluth, na Minnesota, ele escolheu uma casa que tinha um porão. E aí ele disse para a esposa que o porão era dele, que o porão, não importava o que ele fizesse com o resto da casa, mas o porão era dele. E aí que começou toda essa questão dos aquários. Eu acabei de partilhar com ele, eu também me mudei há 10 meses e o porão é meu, então ninguém mexe lá. Antes da gente continuar, pessoal, quero dar boa noite aí a todos os presentes, o Thiago Dias, o Gustavo, o Luiz Mota aí sempre nos ajudando, um grande amigo, Claudinei, o Leonardo Cruz sempre presente também. O Leonardo é a pessoa que mais comentou em nosso canal, então muito obrigado, Leonardo, por estar acompanhando sempre o trabalho. James Ledo, Neguimar, Sejam bem-vindos aí ao nosso grupo. Quero pedir para vocês aí, se não são inscritos, se inscrevam no canal e compartilhem o nosso link. Nós estamos apenas com 17 pessoas online. A gente precisa de mais, a gente tem condições de trazer mais pessoas aí. Compartilhem o nosso link e vamos aí trabalhando e conversando com Matt Pedersen, uma grande referência, um grande prazer de estar aqui junto com ele. I was just saying hi for the audience, Matt, and once again telling them that it's quite an honor for me to have you here in the show since, as I mentioned, I have followed your work for a long time. You, Martin Moe, and Matthew Wittenrich are the guys that I look forward. They're really interested in fish breeding, and well, you all guys, you three guys are the core for me.
Well, I appreciate it. I think there's a lot more people at this point that we should look to. I think I'm in a particular position with coral now that I'm able to bring those stories to people, and you may know Richard Ross, and Richard. One of the things that Richard said to me as a friend was he felt one of my better traits as a human being was my desire to lift people up and elevate people. It wasn't about me so much as helping tell interesting stories and putting the spotlight on other people. And with coral, that's what I get to do, which is really a lot of fun. So getting to how I ended up working for coral, I'm going to share this with you.
O Matt estava me contando ali, eu falei para ele que é uma grande honra mais uma vez estar aqui junto com ele, né? Ele, o Martin Moe, o Matthew Wittenrich são pessoas que eu tenho como exemplo, pessoas que foram atrás e se interessaram por essa questão de criação de animais em cativeiro, né? Procriação dos peixinhos. E ele mencionou o Richard Ross. O Richard Ross é uma das pessoas que eu quero trazer aqui para o canal também, que a principal tarefa do Matt é em elevar espíritos, né, em tornar as pessoas mais felizes. E é justamente isso que ele tem como objetivo na Coral, né, nas publicações. Então, isso são coisas aí que ele está trazendo. E ele entrou na Coral, ele vai contar agora para nós.
Okay, so getting to how my relationship started with James Lawrence and Coral Magazine, I'm going to share this with you guys. So this was the first article that I wrote for Coral Magazine, A New Future for the Harlequin Filefish.
Matt, one thing before, just tell me, James Lawrence is the owner of the publication, and Daniel Knopp is the other senior editor. How this relationship works?
Okay, so good question. So Coral Magazine, I don't have, well...
Eu perguntei para ele agora, ele falou que ele começou a relação na Coral Magazine com James Lawrence. E eu questionei ele, tá, mas espera aí, e o Daniel Knopp? Não é o Daniel Knopp que é o editor dela? Como é que é essa relação entre James Lawrence e Daniel Knopp?
So, this is German, let's pull it back there. This is the German Coralle, or Coral. And so, Coral Magazine is published in Germany by NTV, and Daniel Knopp is the editor-in-chief for Coral Magazine in Germany. And so this is the original publication. This one predates the English publication.
Essa é a publicação original, ela é em inglês. O nome da revista se chama Coralle, e ela começou muito antes da que a Coral Magazine. E o Daniel Knopp é o editor-chefe dela.
So, for example, let's see here. So, we will get a copy of Coral like this, all in German, and it gets translated. And then in a nutshell, we decide which articles we like and which articles we're going to use. And we might replace some of those with a few articles that were sourced here in the United States. And so what's kind of evolved over the years, it was originally brought to the United States and brought to the English language by Leng Sai, And then in 2009, Lang decided he no longer wanted to do it. And James Lawrence, who runs Microcosm Publishing, so a lot of the books that you...
So he's the Microcosmos publisher.
Yes. So they brought in, and they took over that license and the responsibility. So all of those Microcosm books that you've seen, those were James Lawrence. He's the editor on them, and he's the publisher on them. And so all of those books that go all the way back, that's all James Lawrence. And when the opportunity presented itself, he took over and started doing the English language of coral. And so it was within, I want to say it was the second issue where I actually approached James because I had just finished breeding the Harlequin filefish. I had all the information I felt I needed to write a really groundbreaking article. And I said, you know, I want this in coral. I don't want this going anywhere else. I want it in coral. And so we published that article that I just showed you guys. And that's officially when my relationship with coral started.
Então, essa revista é uma publicação alemã, né? E nos Estados Unidos ela foi trazida por uma pessoa, which was the name of the guy? Lindsay. E então esse Lindsay teve um momento que ele não quis mais fazer essa tradução, esse trabalho. E daí o James Lawrence, que é o editor da Microcosmos, ele é o proprietário da Microcosmos. Muitos livros que eu tenho aqui são da Microcosmos. Por exemplo, esses guiazinhos aqui. Yes, that's right, I do have one.
Yeah, right there. Reef to Rainforest and Microcosm, right there. That's
right. Oh man, I'm still shocked about Bob. It was something that really unfortunate. Então, o James Lawrence é o proprietário da Microcosmos e ele viu essa oportunidade e pegou a Coral Magazine. E na segunda edição já o Matt fez um artigo na produção, ele criou o Harlequin Filefish e ele queria isso publicado na Coral. E ele contatou o James Lawrence, essa era a segunda edição da revista que estava sendo publicada nos Estados Unidos sob a direção do James Lawrence, e assim começou o trabalho com ele. Okay, and well, I suppose that you already knew James Lawrence from before, right?
No. That was my initial introduction to James, was reaching out to him and say, I have this story. I've always been a fan of coral. It has to go in Coral Magazine. And that was how our relationship started.
So, that's nice. And 10 years ago.
More than. That was back in 2008, 2007, 2008. So later on, I became a senior editor, which at the time, you'll see a lot of people on the masthead when you look at an issue of Coral. Let's see here. So this entire masthead that we have here, all of these names that are on here, the level of individual contribution varies substantially. It all depends on what we need and when we need it. Not everyone here has a paid position or anything. When I started as a senior editor, I was bottom level. I wasn't paid, and it was mostly, as it was put to me, mostly an honorary position. And it was, I value your input. You will get to read the magazine before anyone else. If you and you will have. I want your feedback on certain things, and I will send it to you. And I said, sure, I'm happy. That's an honor. That's great. And so we had that relationship for maybe a year at that point. And then, to make a long story very short, we moved here to Duluth. I ended up getting laid off from my professional job. And it was right about the time that James Lawrence was launching or going to launch Amazonas. And he said, you're available. Why don't you come work for me? And so that was when the jump happened.
Então, em 2008 ele criou isso, né? E naquela coluna que tem na Coral Magazine, tem um monte de editores e tudo. E aquelas posições, aqueles postos que lá estão, muitos não são pagos. E o Matt, em 2008, ele já era um editor sênior da revista e ele fazia aquilo lá por paixão. Nada mais do que isso. Ele lia a revista antes de todo mundo, criava, fazia as anotações, e ele fazia tudo isso pelo prazer de estar ajudando o hobby. Quando ele se mudou para Duluth, ele acabou sendo desligado do emprego que ele tinha e começou a oportunidade de ter a Amazonas. E o James Lawrence chamou o Matt para trabalhar com ele, então. Isso sim sendo remunerado. E isso é uma coisa, né, Matt, que a gente sempre está conversando. Eu converso com várias pessoas aqui, muitos colegas aqui no Brasil me perguntam, tá, Edu, mas tu tá pagando para essas pessoas para estarem participando contigo nas lives? E a resposta que eu trago sempre é a mesma. Não, fazemos essas coisas por amor. Eu não faço um canal de YouTube que todo mundo conhece. Eu tenho uma empresa, eu sou empresário. Faço isso por amor ao hobby. Uma paixão em comum que todos nós temos desde quando a gente era criança. E é bacana ver isso, que isso é em todo mundo. Matt, I was just saying that a lot of people approach me here in Brazil, and they ask me, Edu, how you brought Mark Leverson, man, the other Brazilians, are you paying them something for them to be in the live with you? And how you do that? How you do this thing? Because you're making money from YouTube, from how much money you make from views and things like that. And I said, I run a company here in Brazil. I do have my own company, and me and also all the guests that I interviewed, we do it for the passion that we have for the hobby. Most of us, I started when a child. You mentioned to me 5 years. I started with 9 years, and it's just about love, just about passion to do it.
It was a gigantic pay cut to work for a magazine at the time, and then 2 magazines instead of being a software developer. There is a massive pay discrepancy in how those things are valued. But all of my training and background and work experience, plus my knowledge of fish, this is the job I feel I was meant to do. It brings all those. I mean, I run the websites. I right now, when we were talking earlier today, I was proofing the final copies of Amazonas, which will go to the printer on Tuesday. I've already read the magazine 3 times. Effectively, so I never have to really open it when it shows up, because I've seen all this, or I wrote it, so it changes things a little bit. But my training is in, I had technical writing, I had Photoshop, Illustrator, Quark at the time was the publishing software. I had all of that in college, and then I used a lot of that in my professional career as well. And all that happened here is this just brought everything I'm good at together in one place. And then on top of it, I was in the right place at the right time. I had the right relationships, but honestly, most of my jobs over the years have been I feel like I've been very lucky. Someone knows I'm available and reaches out and says, please come join me. I need you now that you're available. So in that respect, that is more or less how Coral happened, and then Amazonas happened. So.
Então, o Matt estava me falando que teve uma grande discrepância de salarial quando ele saiu desse outro emprego, né, e foi se tornar o editor lá das revistas, né, profissionalmente. Mas ele tem o sentimento que tudo convergiu nisso. A instrução dele, o curso superior dele, as atividades profissionais antes, ele conseguiu juntar tudo nisso, os peixes e a formação acadêmica dele. Então ele se sente muito prestigiado, principalmente que quando ele estava disponível no mercado, teve essa pessoa como o James que disse, vem trabalhar comigo. Então ele se sentiu muito feliz com isso. E isso é bem bacana. Fico muito, muito feliz por ti e conseguir fazer essas coisas. And man, that's great. I'm quite happy for you, because I believe, as you mentioned to me, I just said to you before, so you studied the visual communication, web design, so that's perfect for being a senior editor.
Yes.
Matt, nos conta quão grande é esse negócio, quantas revistas são vendidas na Alemanha, quantas revistas são vendidas nos Estados Unidos e ao redor do mundo. So, Matt, tell us, how big is this business? How many editions, how many magazines are sold in Europe and in USA in general, in America in general?
So most of it is subscription based. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's, I want to say that Coral reaches a readership. The last time we calculated it, it was about 38,000 people. Circulation numbers are lower because you have print and then you have digital subscription. So, I mean, if someone wanted detailed numbers, they can look at the advertising data sheets and that will give everyone they need to know. But it's thousands and thousands of aquarists that we reach. We may not be the biggest, but we're not trying to reach every new beginning hobbyist. That's not really, for anyone who's read Coral or Amazonas, I assume that our readers have probably kept aquariums for a few years, and most have multiple aquariums. Not to say they're not accessible to beginners, but that's where we're at.
São aproximadamente 38 mil publicações, pessoas que leem. Alguns são físicos, outros são apenas digitais. E isso são bem diversificados. A gente consegue acessar esses dados ali nos dados de publicação. Eu sou um cara que gosta de sentir na mão, de ter revista, colecionar, que nem o Ledo está falando aí nesse comentário. E eu queria saber como funciona, se funciona corretamente essa questão de despacho para outros países. Eu leio a digital, mas eu ainda gostaria assim de ter a física. So Ledo is just mentioning that the Coral magazines are wonderful, are sensational, and that he has his own private collection. One thing that I want to tell you is that I do read the digital version, but I'm more a paper kind of guy. So how does it work? It works fine shipping them overseas from USA?
Normally it does. Right now it doesn't. Right now we are, with the pandemic, I can tell you more on the Amazonas side because as I alluded to, I am now one of the 3 partners. We have a separate publishing company now that publishes Amazonas. James wanted to step back from that, so it's myself and Dr. Stefan Tanner and Mike Tuccinardi, who are now the partners in Amazonas. So we carried the torch forward. James still handles Coral and Microcosm. So we share mostly the same staff as well. But because I'm now a publisher of Amazonas, because I'm now literally, one of the guys who owns the publication, I see things and I know things that I wouldn't know for Coral. And so one of the things I can share for our international readers, it's really unfortunate, but we have people in the UK seems to be the worst right now, believe it or not. People in the United Kingdom are having the hardest time getting it. India is not getting any mail from the United States. So we've had to put anyone who's in India, we've had to pause their subscription because we can't send them anything. And so there are going to be issues that I presume they will not get because we can't send them to them. So they'll have to, but we're not docking them for the issues that they're missing. We had to put it on pause. It was not a lot of people who get print to India. But I know, for example, Australia is about a 6 to 8 week shipment time normally to get Coral from the printer to someone in Australia. It's about 6 to 8 weeks. The longest I've heard right now, I think, was 10 to the UK for an issue of Amazonas. Someone mailed and said, I see you're publishing the next one. I haven't gotten the last one. And then a week or two later, oh, it finally showed up. So we are really slow. It has everything to do with the pandemic and just the slowdowns of delivery. But digital is the same for everyone. Digital gets everywhere at the same time.
But some people I believe that are like me that need the paper.
That's me. I'm like that too. The bulk of our subscribers are, and with a print subscription, you have access to digital as well. So, that's an add-on. So I'll let you.
Funciona muito bem a questão do despacho das revistas. Só que infelizmente agora, por causa da pandemia, isso não está acontecendo. E a situação pior, o Matt estava contando para nós, que é no Reino Unido. A Inglaterra estava demorando um horror, a Índia estava demorando um horror, a Austrália está demorando de 6 a 8 semanas para receber. E a Inglaterra praticamente não está recebendo as publicações nos Estados Unidos. O Matt estava nos contando que agora na Amazonas, o James Lawrence saiu e o Matt, junto com mais 2 sócios, agora são as pessoas que fazem a publicação. Vocês fazem a impressão com o James ainda ou estão fazendo em outro lugar? So Matt, you guys still doing the printing with James Lawrence presses, or you just doing outside?
Oh, it's a third party who provides.
It's a third party.
Yeah.
Ok. Então eles estão fazendo fora e daí não tem mais a relação com ele. The microcosm they have their own presses, right?
No, that's not really how the printing business works anymore.
Okay. So it's also third party.
Yeah, you would have to be a gigantic. My father worked for a printing company, and so he joked when I got a job in web design that I was putting him out of a job. So, but the actual printing companies receive the files and do the printing. It's very rare at this point that I think any individual company would own its own press and its own printers. We only publish the magazine gets published in one day, and then between the two, it's one a month because they're bi-monthly magazines. So there's every month it's either Coral or Amazonas. That ties up one printer for one day. So you would not own the printing presses because they would be sitting there idle. So it's all outsourced in that regard. It's all with another company that does the actual printing. So.
But that's quite good that you guys still keep a good relationship and you can arrange this type of thing. So that's great.
Most of the staff is shared. The same designers work on Coral and work on Amazonas. They just work for 2 different companies now. And yeah.
And Daniel Knopp is the owner. You mentioned to me is the chief editor, but he owns the company.
He's not the owner either. No. He NTV. So Amazonas was this one, the freshwater one. There we go. Amazonas was started by Hans Georg Evers. He's a German. And so he was the person who started the magazine and was the editor-in-chief. And so just like Coral, Amazonas would come from Germany to us and we translate it. So it's never a carbon copy. It's never identical. And what I didn't really get to earlier was that sometimes an article that's published here in English first will wind up going back to Germany. So what ends up happening is we'll get a German issue that has an article we did maybe 3 issues later, and we have to replace it.
I understand. Então, os artigos publicados lá na Alemanha, né, na revista original, não são os mesmos que estão na edição americana. São artigos diferentes que eles selecionam e escolhem. Então, a revista ela começou com Hans
Georg Evers, or Hans Georg Evers. I don't know how you say it in German, but Hans Georg Evers.
Hans Georg Evers. E daí ele é o proprietário da Alemanha, e se eu não me engano, foi ele que veio na piscicultura tanganica com o Ivan. Eu acho que o Ivan me falou dele. I believe that it was Hans's name. Oh, okay, you can go.
No, just shut the door.
I believe that it was Hans that came to Brazil because the one that last week we interviewed Ivan Nogueira from Piscicultura Tanganica. I believe that you know it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Hans is
very good friends with them. Yes.
He do a wonderful job here with him, and I believe that he was here, and now I see it.
Many times. I feel like he's always there.
Another comment from Paulo. It's also a good friend from us. My personal impression about this magazine is that it is unique. Every edition is like a work of art with high quality information.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I mean, that is what we shoot for. I will share a story with you. I deal with authors now and again, and one of the most important things with any author and any submission, the photos have to be exceptional. You have to have the photos, and they have to be good. And your text could be perfect, but if we don't have the visual support, your story is dead. So every aquarist out there who aspires to ever write or communicate about aquarium keeping, my biggest advice is become a good photographer and hone that craft. You have to. So I'll close with this and let you translate. I submitted for an article that I had written for Coral. I sent James Lawrence 200 different images of a particular set of fish. He rejected every single one, said they are not good enough. The bar to getting into either of these publications is up there. It's incredibly high. But that's why we have the response that we have.
Então, ele fica muito feliz com as palavras ali do Paulo. E ele relata que ele, quando ele mandou esse artigo para Coral, ele chegou a mandar de mais de 200 fotos e todas foram rejeitadas pelo James porque as fotos não eram boas o suficiente. As fotos têm uma importância muito grande em contar uma história e isso é importantíssimo. É isso que define a estar dentro da revista. Não importa ter só uma história boa, tu tem que ilustrar ela com excelentes fotos, né? Então essas aí são detalhes muito importantes. Just a second, I need to open the door for my cat.
Sure, I've got one of those too. So, really happy to be here. Hello to everyone in Brazil who's watching.
Sorry for that.
That's all right.
He was just scratching at the door. Okay, let's see where we stopped. So the harlequin filefish, you were the first one to breed it.
And still the only.
E ainda o único, ele foi o primeiro a procriar o harlequin filefish e continua sendo o único. Será que é o único? Eu não me lembro de ter visto uma palestra, acho que foi do Richard Ross que teve, não foi? Matt, maybe I'm a little bit confused. I remember, I think it was Richard Ross that I saw it, that he was even feeding a small, he was queuing the clownfish babies with the harlequin.
No, that was not harlequin filefish. That was the Dr. Seuss fish. Dr. Seuss fish.
Oh, okay. So I'm in confusion.
Yeah. Balena perca sussii, I believe, is the name.
And how you achieved that, man?
How did I breed the harlequin filefish?
Yeah.
I got lucky.
Como é que tu conseguiu fazer a criação do harlequin? Acho que ele continua sendo o único, né? Eu tive sorte.
I'll share some pictures here for people who haven't seen it here. Let's see if I can change this. So I love this picture. This is a really good picture. So give me a second here. Share. So the way it worked, and I can give the background while I'm pulling this up here. The way it worked was Iris Bunik in Germany had bred the bristletail filefish, Acrichtes tomentosus. And I wanted to replicate that success. I went out looking for that fish, and I could not find that fish here in the U.S.
Então, ele foi atrás do Bristletooth filefish, já que tinham sido conseguidos lá na Alemanha, e ele queria replicar esse sucesso, né? Eu quero dizer que nós vamos estar entrando agora nesse tema, mas depois nós vamos retornar. Eu gostaria que o Matt falasse mais sobre a estrutura dele, como ele fez a sala de peixes dele, mas isso a gente vai entrar depois. Matt, we are going inside this topic now, but after that I would like us to come back a little bit earlier so you can share with us how you started the breeding tanks in your basement and all the things like that. So first we go for harlequin fish, then we go back for it.
So this was back before I had the basement.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
So you did it in the apartment?
Oh, yes. 100 gallons.
Oh, boy. Então, isso daí foi antes ele ter toda a parte de criação dele. Isso daí foi no apartamento em um aquário de 300 litros. É inacreditável. Ok. So it was a community fish tank or it was only that?
As I said before, I was my most productive when I had just a few tanks and was in that apartment. Bigger is not always better.
Ele estava num tanque comunitário, né? E ele estava falando lá que não é quanto mais melhor. Ele teve muita sorte hein, com essa configuração. Ok?
So I'm trying to see if I can find any pictures of that. I don't know that I have any really, but in Chicago, in our condo, we had two 24-gallon nanocubes. So the cube tank, the BioCube, 24 gallons, it's about 80 liters, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a 6-gallon. So what is that, roughly 20 liters? And then we had two 10 gallons. So two 37-liter tanks for, and so actually we had three 24 gallons. Yeah, I'm doing the math right. 3 24s, a 6, and two 10s.
Resumindo, não era um único aquário de 300 litros, era um aquário comunitário, sim, mas eram vários nanos que ele tinha, inclusive 2 nanos de 80 litros aí que eram onde estavam os peixinhos.
So let me see if I can find a picture.
But that picture is not, you're not the one that made it, right?
The one that's on the screen now, the two larval. Yes, that's me. That was through a microscope.
How did you achieve that?
How did I shoot that?
Yeah.
So took the eyepiece off the microscope and put the camera down to it, and the large fish is a composite, multiple images put together in Photoshop.
That's nice.
Those are to scale. So what you're seeing at the top there, well, wherever, the top is newly hatched, and the bottom one is 28 days old.
Então a foto de cima é recém-eclodido e a de baixo é com 28 dias. Ele bateu as fotos com um microscópio, né? Eles são pelágicos, né? E como que tu foi na questão da alimentação? Porque a alimentação é o gargalo de toda a produção, né, Matt? Matt, they are pelagic spawners, right?
No.
No, they're benthic spawners.
They are. I'm pretty sure I have a picture of that handy. So they spawn in the substrate. They spawn usually in algae, and from there I would pull the eggs out with a turkey baster. I don't know what you would call it in Portuguese.
How big are the larvae? The larvae when they're born?
Under 3 millimeter.
Okay, that's not so difficult size then.
Here, let's see. Here, perfect. This is good. Give me a second here. Share this one.
As larvas nascem com aproximadamente 3 milímetros, tá? E eles são de procriação benthic, eles colocam as ovas no substrato.
So that picture that I just sent is the eggs in red gracilaria.
Okay, these small dots over there then.
Yep. And this might even be better for people to get a sense of scale here. Let me share another one with you.
Hey Matt, one question.
Yep.
Have you read thought about publishing the Amazonas and coral in other languages as well? Because a lot of Brazilians does not speak English.
It's there at times there have been other language versions of coral. I believe at one point you could get it in Polish and Italian. I know those languages existed, but those all have to be licensed with NTV, and the audience has to be big enough to support the license. So that's really, I think, you have to have enough people willing to pay the money to carry it. And I know NTV is always willing to talk about it because it's been done before.
Então, existiram já publicações em polonês e em italiano da revista Coral, mas elas não acontecem mais. Todos os idiomas têm que ser licenciados pela NTV, que é a empresa detentora dos direitos da Coral, que faz a publicação. O grande gargalo é se vai ter um público suficiente para exigir isso, porque queira ou não, tem que pagar e o valor não é tão barato, né? E agora, Matt, tu não tem ideia de como que tá a taxa de câmbio aqui para nós, tá? Uma loucura. Então o negócio já fica terrível mesmo. Matt, you won't believe how the exchange rate is going for us, man. It just increased about 50%.
Oh, I believe it.
You would be king if you come to Brazil, if there are flights to Brazil. And man, everything is got really overpriced. So I believe that the price point is something that you need to look at.
Magazines do not make a lot of money. It is it's a really interesting business to be in, and everyone gets paid. But it's not like we're all getting rich. We are not getting rich, not at all. It is back to that. It is a labor of passion and a labor of love. So
I see it. I see it and understand that. Okay, so now Maggie, entra. Entra, então fica aqui dentro, coisa séria. Okay, now close it. Okay, let's go back. And you were showing to us that it was really small.
So that's hair algae and caulerpa.
Uh-huh.
And you can see all the little eggs in the center there.
Okay, so they're not they are not together like the clownfish. They're just scattered over there.
I wonder. We could try this if I have it. There are videos online. I would have to it'd probably be easier to show you videos online. But let's see here if this works at all. Because I have the spawn on video. Here we go. Let's see if this will play and if I can share it. Usually this doesn't work. We learned with distance learning here in the United States. My wife is a teacher, and we learned that video sharing usually doesn't work well. So let's see if
Especially when we need it.
Well, just the whole ability to put it through another video platform. But I'll try. We'll try it here and see what happens. It may be blurry. It may not work, but we'll try. So
a gente estava falando ali que os ovos deles não são colocados como peixe palhaço.
So this is a pair of harlequin filefish in the community. There we go, right there. That's the spawn. And so you saw the male came down right there.
They're corallivores, right?
They are, but they do not need coral to survive and live and spawn. We talked about Bob Fenner really briefly. I loved Bob, and I loved his cut straight to the point. And what he wrote about this species was that it was doomed, that it was like a cut flower, that you would take it from the ocean, enjoy it in your aquarium for a couple weeks while it withered and died. And that was his opinion of the fish back in the earlier days.
And now we can clearly know that that's okay, right?
But it took a lot of work and effort to figure it out.
Falando ali que eles colocam os ovinhos ali, aquilo ali ele mostrou para nós um vídeo deles, do macho fecundando os ovos que estavam no substrato, e eles são peixes coralívoros, eles comem corais, né? Mas eles não precisam dos corais para viver. Nós falamos de Bob Fenner, que faleceu recentemente, acho que foi ano passado, né? Ele falou que aqueles peixes eram como flores que nós tirávamos da natureza, que a gente ia aproveitar durante um tempo e eles iriam acabar morrendo. Mas hoje já sabemos que não é bem assim. Hoje já conseguimos ter esses animais e eles viveram bastante tempo contigo, Matt. And Matt, now we know that's not like that. How long they lived with you? They could be happy. They could be healthy without corals.
They can, but you have to. It's still a very difficult fish to train onto coral.
Like copper band, like a long-nosed butterfly fish.
Much worse.
Much worse.
Much worse. Much more difficult. So I still call them expert-only fish. I would not. This is not a fish to just go out and buy.
Então, ele é um peixe que tu tem que treinar e ensinar a comer, só que é muito mais difícil do que, por exemplo, o que a gente faz com long-nosed butterfly fish, é muito mais difícil do que a gente faz com copper band. Então, é um peixinho que a gente tem que ensinar e é complicado. And you still keep them, or you have sold them out?
Well, they only live, you asked about lifespan. Harlequin filefish, we are pretty sure at this point their natural lifespan is probably only 4 or 5 years. That's the longest. Even you may be familiar with Joe Waiulo, Long Island Aquarium. He has the 20,000 gallon Reef aquarium full of coral. And when he puts Harlequin filefish in that tank, where they can graze on any live coral they want, they live 4 or 5 years. So for me, that is a living coral reef in every aspect. They live 4 or 5 years there, then that's probably what they live everywhere.
Eles colocaram o Harlequin filefish nos aquários do Joey Aiulio. Ele é o curador, eu acho, do aquário de Nova York, se eu não estou enganado. He's the New York Aquarium curator, right?
Long Island Aquarium.
Long Island. Então, eles colocaram os peixinhos lá e eles podiam comer todos os corais que eles quisessem. E eles vivem em torno de 4 a 5 anos. A mesma coisa aconteceu com o Matt. Então, acredita-se que esses peixes não vivem mais do que isso.
So after I worked with the Harlequin filefish, I tried these guys, which are the Red Sea long-nosed filefish, Oxymanocanthus hallei.
Mas, Matt, antes da gente entrar nesse outro peixinho, nos fala para nós das necessidades alimentares deles. Tu tratou eles com rotíferos, com cistos de artêmia, com náupulos de artêmia, como foi? But before we go on this one, how you raised the larvae? It was just with rotifers and copepods, or you just went with artemia naupili?
No, rotifers for the first 4 weeks, and then, well, first 2 weeks, but artemia as soon as you could. But the big key that I figured out was that you had to get them onto prepared food starting at about 4 weeks, about 28 days, and then they settle out around 55 to 60 days. So you have to get them trained onto prepared foods very early. So crushed flake foods, pellets. If they didn't get onto them by the 4th week, it was pretty difficult to rear them through.
So no need for copepods, right?
I am absolutely convinced that any marine fish larva that will accept copepods will benefit from them. I did not have them. I can't, other than I had tigriopus, tigerpods. And I don't really recall ever offering them. But I think any larval marine fish will fare far better with copepods than it will artemia. Artemia is like feeding them ice cream. It's just not the right nutrition.
What have you enriched the rotifers with?
Either silicon or now using the omega products from Reed Mariculture that have the DHA in them.
You guys are really lucky to have silicon so readily available.
We are.
Então, toda a larvicultura dos animais ali foram feitos apenas com rotíferos e depois de um ponto com ração flocada, esmagada, né? Aí que foi o grande sucesso que o Matt teve, porque os animais precisavam dessa complementação. Os rotíferos que foram utilizados foram enriquecidos com Selcon. Selcon é uma linha de produtos que fazem que tem nos Estados Unidos lá justamente para enriquecer isso, e eles são privilegiados em ter isso lá. Oh, that's nice.
So those are, I think there's about 50 in that, and those are probably about 4 to 5 weeks old at that point. Once I'd figured out what I was doing, I started to get to the point where I was going to get new numbers, or good numbers. And then I'll share another one too. And then we moved, and then I lost the brood stock. So, it was a big move. It's an 8-hour drive, but you got to move all the tanks and stuff. But I had kind of figured out how to do the Harlequin files. I feel like I was on the cusp, but pretty much I published my information. I shared it. I talked to anyone who wanted to try to rear them. Many people spawned them successfully and got eggs out of them, maybe got hatches, but no one seemed to get beyond that. And so even now today, that's where we are. We don't have, no one's repeated this success. And I'm to the point now where I might start trying at it again, just because it was, one time in my life where I did this. I shared everything I knew, and yet no one has repeated it. That maybe I missed something. Maybe I did something that I'm not doing now. The curiosity in why no one else has done this has me wondering. I know many talented breeders saw this and tried this and haven't been able to succeed. So, but clearly I was on the right path. These fish here, sadly, they were lost because I had to go do a speaking event and I wasn't there to take care of them. And you know, they require constant care. I think that's the biggest thing as a marine fish breeder, is the level of time commitment you're going to make is pretty substantial. So if you don't have that time or you're not there,
então, infelizmente, ele teve que se mudar e daí ele acabou perdendo os peixinhos, né? Até hoje ninguém conseguiu replicar esse sucesso que ele teve. E isso é uma coisa bem, bem especial, porque, queira ou não, as larvas já nascem grandes e não tem nenhuma dieta especial, né? E o Matt vai se dedicar a isso agora, tá pensando em se dedicar novamente a fazer isso. Foram quantas vezes tu conseguiu tirar as crias, conseguiu realizar a larvicultura com sucesso? So how many times you achieved to keep the fishes after the metamorphosis?
3.
3 vezes ele conseguiu fazer isso com os peixinhos. Hein, Matt, mas isso é bem curioso, né? Porque, queira ou não, a larva nasce grande, já se alimentando de rotíferos, depois ela foi para a ração. O que tu acha que pode estar acontecendo? That's quite unusual, I would say that, because the larva, they grown in a considerably big size, they feed on rotifers, and after that they go for flake food. What do you believe that's making it so hard for other people to achieve it?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't even know. I mean, I upsized my larval rearing containers, and that helped. I was still learning how to better, like learning when to wean them onto prepared foods, realizing that I needed to do it sooner. And that was as far as my research got. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions. I'm confident we can do this. I'm convinced, absolutely convinced, that we can end up producing hundreds of captive bred harlequin filefish, if not thousands. But there's just more research to be done. There's more work to be done.
And if they are trained to eat flake food, man, that would be great. That would be marvelous.
Yes, it would. I mean, that's one of the big things about breeding marine fish is when they're, a difficult fish like this is fundamentally changed. Its husbandry changes when it's captive bred.
Então, ele vai se dedicar mais a isso, ainda não sabemos o porquê do motivo, mas uma grande vantagem é que os animais já estão acostumados a comer ração, e isso é raríssimo, né? Olha só que bacana, o chefe. That's beautiful photos.
So those, I don't remember the dates, but these are the 3 that I reared through metamorphosis and beyond. The one that you see on the lower right of the screen was the first one ever, and it was weaned too late, and so it died around, I want to say, about 90 or 100 days of age. It started to wither away and die. So the one you see to the left on the bottom is actually, a younger one by several weeks, and it's already bigger. It was weaned much earlier, and then the one on the top in this photo is the youngest. It hasn't settled yet.
Então, nessa foto nós conseguimos ver o animal lá da ponta do canto inferior direito, já tem quase 100 dias de vida, mas ele é muito magrinho. Já o outro, a larva que está ali em cima, que ainda não fez a metamorfose, ela já está maior. Por quê? Aí ela já conseguiu comer, o Matt já conseguiu ensinar ela a comer a ração, né? E aquele animal mais velho acabou morrendo, porque não conseguia se alimentar depois, né? E, nossa, que lindo. E, Matt, eu acho que foi quando isso? Porque eu lembro de uma edição da Coral que tinha o Harlequin Filefish na frente. É essa que trouxe o teu artigo? Matt, I record a Coral magazine which have the image from the Harlequin Filefish in the front. It was that one which your article was published?
In English, I don't believe so. In English, it is. I can find that cover for you. I want to say it's March, April 29th, 2009.
Oh, it was in 2008 that you...
But I accomplished it, but then you have the lag time to publish. So, let's see here. It is, go back. It's not the best picture, but for the English print, it is March, April of 2009. So that was the one that that I put everything in print.
A edição em que saiu a publicação do Matt sobre os corais foi na edição de março, abril de 2009. E Matt, conta para nós a história disso aqui. Como começou, como que foi criado esse livro e como tu partiu pro Bangai. Matt, let's aboard the history of this book. How you started with the cardinal fish and how you decided to write a book about it.
Well, so as you note, I'm only one of the co-authors. And so this was a James Lawrence project. This was James Lawrence's idea with Microcosm. We were facing the reality that here was a fish that could be bred in captivity. Deceivingly simply, it is not the easiest fish to actually breed successfully. Meanwhile, there was concern being raised that it was being vastly overcollected in its native.
I remember that.
And it's a very small range. The city I live in is twice as big as all the coral reefs that these fish are found on. It's nothing.
Então, ele é um dos coautores desse livro, né? Esse livro foi idealizado pelo James Lawrence, da Microcosmos, essa é uma publicação da Microcosmos, e a ideia era trazer um peixe, né, que estava sendo coletado. Quando o Bangai foi trazido para o nosso mercado, achavam que ia ser a coisa mais fácil de se conseguir procriar, porque ele já nasce e ele faz a metamorfose dentro da boca do macho. Já nasce grande, vamos dizer assim, né? E só que isso não aconteceu, isso demorou para conseguir, e se tinha muito a ideia de que seria bem difícil de conseguir isso. Então nasceu disso o projeto. I was just mentioning, Matt, that when this fish was introduced, I record, it was, which year was that? 98, 99?
96.
96, 96. E se vinha com sorry, I was telling in English, and it was in 96, and I record that on that presentation that it was introduced as a fish that would easily be bred, since the larvae developed metamorphosis during the stage that is in the mouth of the male, but that didn't happen, right? So
I remember in 1996, I believe I was still in the retail trade, and we had gotten the first Bangai Cardinals that had come in, and they retailed at the time for $300 a piece in 1996. So maybe 500 or 600 today. I don't know what that translates to. But we had a couple of them on display in a reef tank, and me being a person really interested in African cichlids, being mouth brooders at the time, I noticed that some very tiny cardinal fish showed up in the reef tank one day, and it hit me. They're mouth brooders, and oh my God, those are big babies. And we tried to rear them like we would with cichlids. We offered them crushed flake food, and it just didn't work out so well.
Então, quando ele começou em 96, foi quando veio os cardinais. Eles eram vendidos por em torno de $300. Hoje seria $500, $600. E ele trabalhava ainda em uma loja de aquário. E ele se lembra que ele viu um monte de peixinho pequenininho, e daí que ele se deu conta que ele conhecia muitos ciclídeos, né? Que eles... os peixinhos ficavam na boca do macho, e eles tentaram dar alimento flocado, mas não conseguiram, não tiveram sucesso. Okay? And how you achieve success on feeding them?
Well, so being in the retail setting, there was no interest in oh yes, let's try to breed these in our shop. No, it's an aquarium shop. It's there to turn fish over and not start a hatchery in the back. There wasn't the space for that.
Even by selling a fish for $300.
I know, but I think I was maybe 17 or 18 at the time, and the boss is like, no, we're not messing around with this. So it was many years later when I finally got to try to breed them. It was in the mid 2000s, and I mean they can be reared successfully using baby brine shrimp, but baby brine shrimp are a very bad food for them. It is absolutely the wrong nutritional profile, and if you feed them just straight up baby brine shrimp, you will have sudden fright syndrome, which is a nervous development disorder, and they will usually die.
Baby brine shrimp is Artemia salina naupli, right?
Yes.
Ok. Então, naquela época lá, ele tinha em torno de 17, 18 anos, quando ele trabalhava na loja, e mesmo vendendo peixe por $300, o chefe dele não tinha interesse em tentarem a criação. Ele só foi mexer nesse projeto novamente em 2005, 2006, e ele conseguiu atingir o sucesso utilizando apenas náupilos de Artemia, mas isso gera uma mortalidade alta, gerava problemas no sistema nervoso do peixinho. Mesmo ele sendo enriquecido e enriquecendo a Artemia, porque eles também são filtrantes não seletivos, né, Matt? And how about enriching the brine shrimp, salina?
If you enrich them with Celcon, it will take care of that problem. But the goal with Bangais is to get them off of brine shrimp as quickly as you can. Get them eating anything that's better as quickly as you can. And since post-publication of our book, my good friend Chad Vossen shared that he had really good success keeping them in a chrysal, so that fishbowl type circular larval tank where you get a good water flow, and feeding them pellets straight away, like an otohime or a TDO, a small pellet. If it's moving fast enough in the water column, they will just strike at it. So potentially, and that's secondhand information. I've not had the opportunity to try it myself. I trust Chad. He's a good fish breeder. So you may be able to bypass entirely, and that gets into the whole bigger thing of larval fish rearing, where it's not just the food. There's so many other factors in the larval environment that play into whether you're going to be successful rearing them or not. And how you house them and the environment you give them, everything from the light and the circulation can change how successful you're going to be. It's not just the food. But with Bangais, get them off of the baby brine shrimp as quickly as possible. Copepods would be infinitely better. It's all about DHA and EPA. And brine shrimp do not have DHA, and they metabolize any DHA they get into EPA. And DHA.
Really? I didn't know that. So there is also, when you try to feed an isocresis, it wouldn't have any benefits from it.
As far as being in the gut, it still might. If you gut load a second instar nauplii, maybe. And that's why we used Celcon, because that coats the outside. And so it's like dusting crickets for a lizard with calcium powder. It's just, you coat them, you feed them right away, they get the DHA because it's sticking to the outside. So that was the solution. But the better solution is just better foods, and to not try to rely so much on brine shrimp. It's good for calories, but it's not good for much else.
Então, a questão toda está na nutrição, em fazer eles se alimentarem cedo, né? Existem relatos de sucesso em tanques com alta movimentação, de circulação de movimentação, que faz com que os filhotes consigam pegar ração, né? Na maioria das vezes é possível tentar fazer isso com náupilos de Artemia enriquecidos, principalmente porque a Artemia, ela transforma o DHA em EHP. Então ele metaboliza isso em EHP. Então isso são ácidos graxos, tá, que são importantes no desenvolvimento das larvas e dos peixes como o Bangai. Então aí que está a questão de se utilizar o Celcon. Apesar de serem filtrantes não seletivos, o céu ele gruda na pele, não na pele, no exterior dos náupulos de Artemia. Então seria como dar os grilos dusty, ele falou como dusty crickets, os grilos com esse pozinho em volta para lagartos. Okay, that's how many days this fish?
Oh, that probably is newly spawned, and I think that's a picture that Wittenrich took. I'm just looking through the folder for some interesting pictures.
Newly spawned.
Yeah, so the male is holding, for people who don't know how Bangai reproduction works, they have fairly large eggs, and they are transferred to the male, and the male is a oral incubator, a mouth brooder, and so the orange in his mouth is the eggs, and the throat's puffed out. So just so people know what we're talking about.
Então, para quem não conhece, tá? O Bangai, ele cria os ovos na boca. O macho pega os ovos fecundados e faz com que os peixinhos eclodam ali. Essa parte laranja que aparece na garganta e o queixinho, o que seria o queixo dele mais projetado para frente ali, é porque está cheio de ovos.
So here, this is some Bangai eggs. So these are in an artificial incubator. So the male has, in this case, I think I removed them from the male because one of the things we wanted to work on was Bangai dads are really bad. They're not responsible. They tend to eat their babies more than we would like them to. Ooh. So one of the things that, and I'm jumping ahead quite a bit, but one of the things that I always had problems with was the males would not hold to term. And we think we know why, but at the time we weren't sure, and we just have guesses. But one of the things I set out to investigate was trying to find a way to artificially incubate the eggs away from the father so he wouldn't eat them. And so that's where this picture comes from. But those eggs are 3 days post-spawn.
Então, dos problemas é que a maioria dos bangais macho, eles acabam comendo os ovos. Eles não são bons pais, vamos dizer assim. Então, uma das coisas que era foco do trabalho dele era a incubação externa dos ovos. E o que, Matt, que tu acha? Tu falou que hoje vocês acreditam que sabem o que é. O que seria isso? Matt, you mentioned to us that you believed to know what it was. Can you share with us?
Yeah. We think that in an aquarium, initially things work well because the male, when he's young, he hasn't spawned a lot. The female's clutches are smaller, but as it goes on, the males wear out because they're starving themselves for weeks every time they have a clutch of eggs. So pretty much we think that the final solution, if you're going to do this in a closed setting, would be to rotate males. So one female would have at least 2 or 3 males available to her. And then that would allow much more ample recovery time for the male to replenish his fat reserves, to get settled in, because the females are ready to spawn every 2 weeks, but the male holds eggs for 3 weeks. So right there's a disconnect.
Quando o macho tá com os ovos na boca, ele não consegue se alimentar. Então, eles acreditam que o fato do macho estar comendo os ovos é porque a desova é muito frequente e eles acabam tendo deficiências nutricionais. Então, o que eles estão fazendo é a cada eclosão, a cada leva de ovos, eles trocam o macho, porque a fêmea sempre está querendo colocar novos ovos. E assim tu não vai estar prejudicando os machos. Okay, so you achieved that, huh?
Not entirely. If the male holds for several days and you take them away, usually you can go through and get them to grow out. So the only thing we failed at was taking them the day they're spawned. I never got to figure that out, even during the research for the book. But I'm just going to show that just so people can see it. So what you're seeing there is a small vase and a very small water feed going into that vase. And so it would slowly tumble the fry in that vase. And then once they were swimming, you could let them out and grow them up. The earlier photo you saw was in a wine glass, so a similar type of setup: a small water feed, a rounded glass vessel, and then it's in a larger tank for water stability and temperature stability.
Essas daí são garrafas bem pequenas, tá? Que estão dentro de um tanque maior por causa da estabilidade. E isso faz com que os ovos fiquem se mexendo ali dentro. E quando os peixinhos eclodem, a gente já pode tirar eles dali e começar a alimentar, criar eles fora desse ambiente. And you successfully achieved how many adults and how many times, Matt?
Oh, I don't know. that was a decade ago. I couldn't tell you at this point. But I know for the book, we did not have a lot of success. But that was a secondary part of the problem. Was the Bangai Cardinal iridovirus. And that is a virus that Bangai Cardinal fish were getting, and were just dying without reason. And we've seen that happen in other species of fish. People who keep freshwater angelfish, or freshwater dwarf gouramis, or people who are familiar with koi, all have probably some understanding of iridovirus, in these species-specific viruses that cause problems, just like we're dealing with now. Actually, the entire fish room that you've seen pictures of was set up for the book. It was set up to do research for the book, because it wasn't enough to I could have just written how to breed Bangais from what we knew. But that to me is phoning it in. That's lazy. That's not the kind of person I am. So I said, no, I'm going to set up the fish room. I'm going to get Bangais. I'm going to test my theories, see if we can get it going better than we do. And unfortunately, that's easier said than done. So I'll let you translate while I'm pulling up this.
Então, o principal problema com os bangais não é a questão da coleta, mas sim a questão de um vírus que afeta a espécie específica deles, né? E o livro, ele foi coletado com um monte de informações sobre os bangais, não somente como criar esses peixes, né? Mas sim em toda a história e informações sobre os mesmos. Hoje já foi controlado isso, né, Matt? Eu acredito que as populações já estão crescendo novamente. The virus already deceased, right? The population from Bangai is already increasing, right?
We don't know. We don't really know where the virus comes from. That was one of the things. It wasn't necessarily that the team set out to do that and answer that question, but the book project was a project to get more information and to generate discussion. So, at the time, we're dealing with a fish that's potentially being harvested to extinction. We're dealing with a fish that's supposed to be easy to breed, but when people really try to do it consistently, it becomes hard. And then we have them dying like crazy, like these fish you saw here. The entire first group of wild Bangais that I got, all 60 of them, came down with the virus and died, and were all sent to our veterinary partners, who confirmed my suspicions from what I was seeing, actually going through and saying, yes, this is the virus. And I had to tear that entire fish room down, bleach it, scrub it from head to toe, and was set back months while waiting for another group of fish to work with. So from a research standpoint, there was almost no research that could happen, because the timelines and receiving a bunch of fish that looked great and then all dropped dead, despite proper care. It's a virus. There's nothing you can do for it. And so I had to start over from scratch well into the project.
You said 60 or 16?
60.
Oh,
might have been 50.
You were quite serious about that.
I mean, I had a lot of things I wanted to test, and wanted to have a number of fish to work with. And yeah, I watched them all die. It was very heartbreaking, but that was what we were facing with Bangai Cardinal fish at the time.
How is the price range over now for cardinal fish?
So the price range on Bangais right now, they kind of had gone really low, and they've kind of come back up a little bit. But after the book was published, a large-scale commercial operation in Asia came online, and they are doing it more in pond culture. So it's not closed system aquaculture. It's large-scale, put them all in a pond, much more like we breed fish in Florida. And there's a good supply now of captive bred Bangais, and the price came way down. It came down to the point where because that happened, we didn't need to have an entire network of home aquarists breeding with 5 or 10 groups here and there of Bangais. But the price dropped to the point where when we published the book, the going retail price for a captive bred Bangai Cardinal fish was $45. And at the lowest I saw it, it had dropped to 10.
Oh my God. Então, vamos lá, a gente conversou muitas coisas, eu não quis interromper o Matt e eu vou procurar traduzir para vocês da melhor forma, tá? Essa questão do vírus realmente é uma loucura. Quando eles estavam fazendo as publicações, ele trouxe 60 peixes, um lote de 60 peixes, e todos eles estavam com o vírus. Acabaram morrendo, não tinha nada o que fazer. E ele teve que desmontar e clorar toda a sala de peixes dele. E teve que esperar meses ainda para se certificar que não seriam contaminados. Então, essa questão do vírus não se sabe de onde vem, não se sabe de como se resolver. Hoje, eles têm uma boa cadeia, um bom fornecimento, porque existem fornecedores da Ásia em que criam eles em estações de açudes, né? Em tanques, não é em aquários só pequenos. É como as criações de hoje de carpas nossas, vamos usar isso como exemplo. Então, nisso está tendo sucesso. Essa questão do vírus, o Matt não saberia dizer como está fazendo. Hey!
You want to say hi, AJ? That was my daughter, my 7-year-old daughter, who just... do you want to say hi? You can't. Ethan already said hi. You can come on and say hi.
Hi,
those are so this is Audrey or AJ. So she's more likely to be the fish person growing up, I think.
Oh, really? You already have a fish tank yourself?
Well, I've got a frog tank.
She has a frog tank too.
Oh my God! You and your brother are all frogs then, huh?
Yeah, I had a fish tank in my room. They just eventually all died.
I mean, yeah, they're tetras. They don't live forever.
Yeah, but I like those glowing fish.
Yeah, she had glowfish for a while, so.
Yeah, because at that time I was scared of dog, and I'm still now. So I think it helped me. During night, they would stay awake and...
No, they didn't.
Well, they would still, like, glow.
Okay, and how many frogs do you have, Angie?
Got to see yours. There's ours.
Oh, that's nice. Hey, AJ, let me show you mine. I have a big dog and a big cat here. He's a little bit fat. Let me show you. Okay, so this is Megan, my wife.
Hello.
E o Fabrício tá por aí, não? Oh, and my cat, we don't know where is it. Okay. That's really nice.
Yep, he came in. Everyone's coming in. So there's Kitty Birch right there.
Oh my God, that's a big cat.
Aw, Kitty Birch. Kitty take me out.
Yes.
Right, Kitty Birch?
Oh, be careful. All right. Say your goodbyes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Everyone out of Dad's office.
Bye, Dad.
See you later.
That's a huge problem, Matt, that we have. We are the ones that are into fish tanks. We are in a lot of hobbies, so a lot of animals and your orchids. I just remember that you told me, and
Yep.
This hobby brings us to so many ways. And how about your orchids? You still keeping them?
No, I mean, other than the few that I have in with the dart frogs, I came to the conclusion that to do the orchids the way I wanted to do them at the scale I was doing that business, because I did that business while I was a multimedia developer. I needed a greenhouse, and I lived in a condo in Chicago. That made it pretty hard to really grow it. And when there were problems, you couldn't apply the same solutions that you would in a greenhouse because it's in your living room and your dining room. It doesn't work the same. So, you know, I was good at breeding orchids, but wouldn't do it again until I had a greenhouse.
Yes, you know, losing 60 fishes is not the same thing than losing all the orchids that you told us, huh?
Yep. But it happens. We are dealing with living things, and none of them live forever. And I think a big part of it, you know, is understanding when it's your fault, understanding when it's something it's all going to die at some point. Your goal is to keep it alive as long as you can. I think about the project I'm working on now, to kind of shift gears, but also go back to what we were talking about earlier, is the corallivores, the coral feeding butterflies. And let me see if I can find one of the good pictures to throw up here really quick while we're talking. And I'll let you translate while I'm doing this.
Então, a gente estava conversando sobre a questão dos hobbies, né? A filhinha dele veio ali, mostrar o cachorrinho, mostrar o gatinho, né? E a gente sempre se envolve com várias coisas, né? Isso é uma característica normal, eu acho, dos aquaristas. E o Matt, ele foi reconhecido também por ser um grande cultivador de orquídeas. Ele tinha muitas orquídeas no apartamento dele em Chicago. Estava tudo na sala, ele estava me contando agora. E isso, teve uma praga lá, ele contou numa apresentação da máquina, que teve uma praga e que matou tudo, ele perdeu milhares de dólares lá em orquídeas por causa disso. E em relação a voltar no tema que a gente estava, ele tem um grande tópico sobre os coralívoros. E esse é a linha de interesse dele agora. Okay, who is this guy?
So this is Chaetodon trifasciatus. They sometimes call them the red fin melon butterfly or the Indian Ocean melon butterfly. They come out of Sri Lanka.
Esse é um Chaetodon, não peguei o nome da espécie, vem do Sri Lanka e ele é um coralívoro, é um borboletinha coralívoro. Okay, that's a pretty fish.
Let's see here. Here's another one. Let's.
And you're trying to breed then? What you're doing?
Well, so the story goes, well, you saw how busy I am with the human breeding.
But you do quite a nice work. They are all lovely.
Thank you. So the thought process. I'm glossing over many other things going on in life in general, but after doing the harlequin filefish, I showed you briefly the long nose, the Red Sea version of that species. I got those to spawn, but I ended up losing those before I succeeded rearing them. So I got eggs out of them, but I never managed to rear their babies. And then the Bangai project was going, other things were going, and then I have always had a soft spot for butterfly fish. I know you can't really see it behind me, but a lot of the artwork on the walls is the four-eyed butterfly.
Nice.
Or none, that is my favorite species of fish. So I was working on trying to breed that species, but also my love for corallivores and my success with corallivores had me rethink whether we could keep these butterfly fish alive as well.
Ok, então ele sempre teve muito interesse pelos borboletas, né? Esses são os peixes que sempre chamaram a atenção dele. Muitas das decorações ali dele que ele mostrou o quadrinho ali são desses peixes. E como ele não se envolveu mais com a criação dos outros peixes, como ele estava lá na questão do Bangai, no projeto do Bangai, aí ele agora está voltando a se interessar por isso e criar, tentar reproduzir esses animais.
So these are fish that are just like Bob Fenner said about harlequin filefish. These are doomed. These are not supposed to live at all. So that was the topic of my MACNA presentation in 2018. Was sharing my data from working with them. and most all of those fish are dead. That you're talking about mortality, and I have to think most of the first acropora that aquarists kept are all dead. You know, we have to learn, and unfortunately learning, especially difficult new things, is going to bring a lot of failure along with it.
Essa foi a apresentação dele em 2018, né, sobre os peixes coralívoros, né. Infelizmente, os peixes de toda essa foto morreram, assim como as primeiras acróporas que chegaram no nosso hobby também morreram. Infelizmente, tudo tem uma curva de aprendizagem e isso custa vidas, né?
Oh, my computer's hanging. So my screen is frozen, but I can still hear you. I assume you can still see me.
Yes, I can see you. I can see
there we go. There we go. It's starting to clear up. I'm just opening all these images and I'm having to close them so that there we go. But you know, while most of them have died at this point, most of them also were able to feed, which is one of the important parts, one of the big messages. And I still have a pair going now, and I feel like I've learned a lot more about being an experienced aquarist. Maybe is a better way to put it. You learn that fish die for many different reasons, and being able to understand the difference between a fish that starves to death or a fish that has pathogens and passes away because you're unable to fix that problem. Those are two very different problems. And the problem I have with the corallivore butterflies, looking at my data, and as I presented at MACNA, it's disease. It's not getting them to feed.
Então, apesar de todos terem morrido, quase todos comeram, e isso é fantástico, né? Então, esses peixes morreram por doenças. Isso o Matt acredita baseado nas observações dele, tá? Então, isso é um fato muito especial.
And so we'll just take a quick walk.
Oh, that's nice. So that's the fish room?
They are still alive as of today. That's the tank that is in my dining room. It's a fish with live rock, basically, but you can see the two corallivores right there. And those are now, I want to say, 4+ years in captivity.
Esses peixes já tem mais de 4 anos, estão na sala dele, já estão mais de 4 anos com ele, e estão lá vivos e saudáveis. Aquilo ali fica na sala dele. A gente já está se aproximando, Matt, de quase 2 horas de live, né? E esse tinha sido o tempo que a gente combinou. Mostra para nós umas fotinhos aí da tua sala de peixes aí, do teu porão, e passa para nós uma mensagem para as pessoas que se interessam pelas mesmas coisas que nós aí de criação de peixes. Matt, we arrive in almost 2 hours from our talk, and I know that's your limit. So,
oh no, I could go longer, but we can always do this again too. So,
okay, that's amazing, because you know we haven't asked anything that we were supposed to do. It's always like that. The talks just keep going and going. It's amazing, this experience exchange. Yes. And I would like, Matt, for you to show us your fish room, and to hear from you a message for the ones that interested in the same things in us about fish breeding.
Okay. Not going to walk you down there now because it's a mess. But let me see if I can find one of those pictures that you've seen online that'll give you an idea. And it's funny because it's one of those things where it never looks the same way, and it does not look. It's in the process of being rebuilt right now, so a lot of it is not running at this time. But let's see if we can. Here's a good one.
Uma coisa que eu vou colocar na descrição, tá, pessoal? Uma apresentação do Matt, acho que foi em 2010, sobre a construção ideal da sala de peixes, né? Eu não sabia que estava disponível online, eu não tinha visto no Book Reef Supply, mas está em um outro site publicado no YouTube, então eu vou colocar na descrição assim que nós terminarmos. I was just mentioning, Matt, that I'm going to share with them written on the description about your presentation on the fish room, and that I didn't knew that it was online, and you just sent me the link.
Yep.
But man, that looks quite great, huh?
Yeah, but that was when I built it like 9 years ago.
Sim, essa é uma foto de 9 anos atrás de quando ele construiu. Ele disse que tá uma bagunça agora.
And I didn't have 2 kids. I mean, I had the one, but like this.
Okay.
But that's what everyone sees. And I'm proud of that. It looked good. It's a total disaster right now, but I mean, like I have tanks running down the center of that room that we're running. I'm equally a saltwater and a freshwater aquarist. So after we were done with the book research, I had all the tanks. It was, well, what are we going to do with all the tanks? And I certainly, running the numbers and then seeing what happened, I was not about to just jump in to be a Bangai Cardinal fish breeder. I was also working with the lightning maroon clownfish at the time and bringing those into the trade. But then I was also doing a lot of work breeding freshwater angelfish, Pterophyllum scalaire. And I was doing those on a production basis to produce to sell versus just to be a hobbyist. And so very quickly, a lot of that room was devoted to grow out for angelfish.
Então, esse aquário aí, ele é um aquarista tanto de água doce quanto de água salgada. Ele gosta dos dois igualmente. Depois do projeto, dos estudos que eles fizeram pro Bangai, eles ficou com muitos tanques. E ele sabia, pelas coisas que tinham visto, ele não ia poder se dedicar ao Bangai, não tinha como, não era economicamente viável. Mas ele se dedicou a fazer a criação do Lightning Maroon, que eu acredito que foi ele que desenvolveu. The Lightning Maroon was developed by yourself, right?
Yes.
Então, o Lightning Maroon é uma criação do Matt Pedersen. Ele que criou e disponibilizou esse animal. Ainda continua ainda lucrativo esse animal, Matt? Is it still profitable for you to raising them?
I don't raise them myself anymore. No, I never. I just wanted to show that was an early larval rearing system that you can't see in that other photo.
I'm going to copy that. That's amazing.
And to be honest with you, I tore that down and got rid of it because
why?
Because it didn't. I learned a lot about all the shortcomings of this design and said, when I do it again, I'm going to do it differently. That's
okay.
That's part of being an aquarist. I mean, I like the top cubes were thrown there because I had them and I figured I would hold things there, and they just never really worked right. And then the tub design was good, but I couldn't get in above them. There was not enough vertical overhead space, and the tubs were too small. All results. I mean, it worked well, but from a functional standpoint, it wasn't the best design. So I ended up giving it away to someone else. And when I go in earnest to, part of the butterfly project is I know it's going to take a long time to get the brood stock spawning. I think that pair I showed you, which is not even the same species, I've seen courtship behavior maybe twice. I knew I was buying myself time with that project, if that makes sense. So that I have kids, I've got 2 magazines to publish.
A lot of frogs.
Frogs, there's a whole other reason why there's frogs, but and all the plants that go with them. But I'm not actively breeding marine fish because I'm looking at those next projects and where I want to go and what I want to do differently. But life with 2 young kids happens at a glacial pace, so I take my time now. And so this was a good next step, jumping up from using 10-gallon tanks.
Então, esse daí é a formação de tanques dele, só que ele viu que estava muito inadequado. Hoje ele já não usaria mais, ele acabou vendendo isso. Lá em cima estão os tanques das matrizes, logo embaixo seriam as bacias para fazer a larvicultura, tá? Mas ele já viu que as bacias estão muito pequenas, e ele acabou se desfazendo desse sistema. Ele não se dedicou mais à criação comercial de peixes, porque agora tem filhos, tem toda uma vida tocada, né? Matt, mostra para nós, por favor, a tua criação de fito e de zooplâncton, por favor. Matt, you have such a nice build-up for larvae rearing. Please show us the Nanochloropsis, the phytoplankton and zooplankton station.
Oh, sure. So I don't have one anymore. Don't need it.
But do you have a beautiful one, or you still just use it Salcom?
Well, no, you still need algae, but we with Reed Mariculture here, we have all the pastes. So here, I'll show you when I was rearing algae. And this is back in Chicago now, so bear with me a second. Just get
então,
this
quando ele criou esses peixes, eles tinham as pastas, ele não precisava mais criar as algas, né? E essa questão de alga que é o terrível, sabe, pessoal? Tem que ficar limpando as garrafas a cada 3 dias, então isso daí que é problemático, sabe? At least in my experience, I used it to have the Nanochloropsis here and the Retifers and so on, and that's the breakthrough for me. It just takes so much time and to clean everything every 3 days, and my God, that's terrible.
So some of the things I can tell you about rearing algae, because if you don't have, like we have, the commercially available frozen pastes, which make life incredibly different. If you are doing algae every week, I calculated it out to be about an 8-hour total time commitment just to run what you're seeing here. This was my original setup in Chicago. You can see my 2 10-gallon tanks there on the right.
Isso daí em Chicago, né? E ele fez a conta, ele precisava de 8 horas por semana só para fazer a manutenção na questão das algas. Então isso deixa tudo muito, muito, muito difícil. Hoje, lá nos Estados Unidos, eles têm a disponibilidade de conseguir essas pastas já prontas e isso facilita a vida.
So you can see the 10-gallon tanks, the phytoplankton cultures. That was an old orchid growing rack that I still had. So you can see some of my orchids were still around at that point. You can see the algae. You can see 2 brine shrimp hatcheries there right in front. And then down on the floor, all those bottles are sterilized salt water and algae media ready to go. And so every week I was making water, filling bottles, bleaching up for a month, harvesting, filling our fridge with harvested algae. It is the...
And the lesson that we can get from it is that your wife is a wonderful, wonderful person, huh?
Yes.
Amazing, man. How you had time to do that? Having a full-time job, having orchids, having the fish, having the algae, everything there. How you did that?
Well, I worked from home. I've been a remote employee since the mid-2000s.
Oh, okay.
So I have no commute. Back in Chicago, I had to go to the office once a week, but it was a 2-hour drive to go 37 miles each way. So I would spend four extra hours on that day going to the office on a bad day. But what you can't see, this is part of my office. If you were to be able to turn to the left, you would see my desk. You would see an aquarium on each side of the desk. Those fish were always by me. So yeah, they were full of fish. When something was hatching at 10 a.m. in the morning, I was there working, and out of the corner of my eye, I would see it happening. With the fish room in the basement, you don't see that. You don't have that. So this again goes back to less is more. If you're, the fish room was set up for reasons, but if I was just to be doing it as a hobby, I don't need what I have. It can get overwhelming for people. So I was much more successful because it was more focused and concentrated, and I was younger and had less family demands, but I got a lot more done then. But it was also right next to me.
A gente estava falando sobre a questão de de menos é mais, né? Quando ele morava lá em Chicago, era tudo dentro do apartamento dele e ele conseguia se concentrar 24 horas por dia nos aquários, né? Ele trabalhava de casa, ele ia para o escritório só uma vez na semana, que era terrível por causa da questão do trânsito, mas ele estava sempre acompanhando tudo. E agora ele tem aquele baita espaço lá embaixo, mas não foi tão grande o sucesso porque ele fica no escritório, ele fica em cima, ele não fica no porão. Então, isso daí foi um fator que delimitou. Matt, uma mensagem para passar para nós aí, com certeza, já fica aqui o convite para a gente se ver outras vezes e continuar essa conversa aí. A gente tem bastante coisa para falar ainda. Mas o que tu pode dizer de mensagem para nós, pessoas que nos interessamos aí pela criação de peixes? Matt, here's the invitation. I hope that we can have another time to talk more deeply on the subjects of fish breeding. That's something that brings interest for us. And what message you would like to tell us, Brazilians that have interest in fish breeding?
Don't go too far too fast, and don't do clownfish.
Não vá muito longe, muito rápido, e não faça peixe palhaço. Mas como assim, cara? Não faça peixe palhaço? Peixe palhaço é a coisa que mais vende, que todo mundo é desesperado por fazer. But how that do not do clownfish? Because clownfish is everywhere. Everyone needs it.
They're everywhere, but you can only have 2 in a tank.
In particular, sorry?
It said they are everywhere, but any particular aquarist can only buy 2. They can only have 2 in a tank. So it's very quickly you overproduce clownfish. They are the saltwater guppy.
Então, qual que é a questão? A questão é que tu consegue produzir muitos e a maioria das pessoas tem somente 2 nos aquários. Então, isso pode ser um problema, né? É um mercado que pode ser curto. Okay.
All right, here, let me give you a picture from someone, just so you see what I'm talking about here. This is not my fish room. This is a small scale hatchery. This was Joe Lichtenbert's hatchery. This is just 3 tanks. He had many more, but this is what I mean when you can produce too many clownfish. Joe only produced clownfish, but he produced enough to serve the entire Chicago market out of his basement. And so did anyone else really need to breed clownfish? No. They were just competing with Joe, driving the price down, overproducing. And like I said before, the average aquarist can only buy 2 and then they're done. So my advice at this point is to look at things that aren't being done commercially. Now, it may be different in Brazil. I mean, here in the United States, we have at least a half dozen full-scale, large-scale ornamental marine aquaculture facilities. We have ORA, Pro Aquatics, Sustainable Aquatics, Sea and Reef, and Palma Labs, which is Wittenrich, who's doing angelfish. You've got Iota, which is importing into the country from Palau, but also doing things in Hawaii now. You have Wenping Su and Bali Aquarich in Indonesia producing and bringing fish into our country. And we don't need more of what they're doing. We need other things. So if you're going to breed as a hobby, either realize you're going to feed a lot of fish to another fish, like Richard Ross was doing, or breed something that people want that aren't already being done. Clownfish, while being the guppy and being easy and really easy, you don't learn too much about doing other fish. In the same way, Bangais don't teach you anything about doing most marine fish. It was Dr. Wittenrich who told me that, in his opinion, it's a very good opinion, the best beginner fish to breed now are the Miacanthus fang blennies, because they breed quickly. They are a little more challenging, but they're still doable, and you will learn skills with them that translate to other fish.
Can you show us a photo of him?
Of Miacanthus?
Então, assim, pessoal, o que o Mef estava falando, né? Que a questão é a gente ir para peixes diferentes. Porque, por exemplo, esse cidadão ali, essa foto que ele estava mostrando para nós, é no porão da casa de um cara que produz o suficiente para todo o mercado de Chicago. O peixinho, o palhaço celares normal. E não adianta ninguém querer competir com ele, só vai estar baixando os preços. Então, o objetivo é ir atrás de outros animais. Ele está falando da sugestão do Matthew Wittenrich, que eu estou tentando contatar para trazer para nós. Ele é um cara fantástico, né? O Matthew Wittenrich, ele é o editor desse livro aqui, que eu já comentei já antes com o Ivan, e ele está sugerindo esse peixinho aí é o que traz mais experiências, a mais aprendizado para alguém que está querendo se interessar por produção, né, por criação de peixes. Por que esse peixinho é interessante, Matt? Matt, why this fish is interesting for someone that's starting into fish breeding?
They're a demersal spawner. They have a slightly longer larval phase, but they will start breeding for you a lot quicker. You can get the fish and start having them lay eggs in a few months usually. They are kind of, if you're not familiar with the fang blennies, they're like anthias. They tend to swim up in the water column. You can have more than 2 in a tank. And they're relatively easy to rear. They use rotifers and brine shrimp and food. You don't have to have copepods for them. And they're not the clownfish that everyone else is doing.
A fase larval dele é um pouco mais longa. Eles vivem em cardume. Eles ficam muito tempo na coluna d'água, né? E eles são bênticos, de reprodução bêntica. Então, eles são peixes diferentes que tu pode ter vários no aquário.
And then the other one I would suggest, just so people have more than one to walk away with, would be any of the dottybacks, any of the pseudochromis. So I just shared a pair of pseudochromis with you there. So the pseudochromis are good because, again, they can breed fast. They're a little more challenging than a clownfish. But I can tell you, as a person who is buying and wholesaling fish from other breeders, I had problems getting dottybacks. I never had problems getting clownfish, but dottybacks go in and out of production. And if you choose the right species, they're really good fish and have many different applications in reef tanks. Yeah, I would say dottybacks would be another good first breeding candidate. And I'll leave you with one last one while you translate that one.
Esses daí são dottybacks, que ele também sugere, que são animais que são de escassez no mercado. É um pouquinho mais desafiador do que os outros, né, e do que o palhaço, mas ele compensa no fato de conseguir ter vários dentro do aquário.
So the last thing I would suggest would be gobies. Any of the smaller gobies, except maybe the really common ones. So from gobies, I would say, it's kind of tough to pick one. And I'm looking for a picture of the one I did, but gobies were actually the first thing that I bred successfully. Here we go. This should be the right stuff. Yeah. And of course, they're not in here. Oh, here they are. This is a horrible picture.
A última sugestão dele vai ser de gobis. Não os mais comuns, mas os gobis são os animais que ele criou por primeiro. E esse daí é uma ótima sugestão. Ele vai nos mostrar uma foto agora.
So those are newly settled green-banded gobies. I believe they are now tiger gobiops multifasciatus. And you can see this is in one of those 10-gallon tanks you saw earlier. You can see the heater for scale. They're absolutely tiny. I had no problem selling every one of those fish. And because they're a tiny goby, they are naturally short-lived, which means they're not going to live as a pair in someone's reef tank for 20 years. They're going to live a couple of years and they're going to need to be replaced. So gobies, other than the common neon goby that everyone produces and produces too many of, if you can find other gobies, you have a good fish to offer to people who have smaller reef tanks, nano reef tanks, and a species like this and some of its relatives. They're a little harder again than clownfish, but they are doable. And you won't have the same problems of finding homes for your babies.
Com exceção do neon goby, que muitas pessoas criam, esses outros gobis, eles são difíceis de encontrar. E eles são peixes que vivem apenas 2 anos, não mais do que 2 anos no aquário, e depois tu precisa comprar outro. Então, todas as vezes que ele criou, ele nunca teve dificuldade em encontrar novos lares aí vendendo eles. Matt, muito obrigado. Olha aí como é que ele é. Peixinho lindo, hein? That's beautiful. Those 3 fishes I haven't saw in fish stores till now here in Brazil. Maybe in São Paulo. I do not live in São Paulo. Maybe in São Paulo, which is a much bigger market, you guys can find it over there. But for me, those species are all brand new.
All the more reason to be breeding them in Brazil then.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the thing. I mean, you know, black ocellaris clownfish hold their value because there are no wild black ocellaris clownfish exports anymore. That fishery has been closed. So they will always catch more money than a regular orange ocellaris. Breeding can make, I think the closing message here is that breeding can make inaccessible fish accessible to hobbyists. And that's where the opportunity lies, whether it's something like a harlequin filefish that's going to eat prepared foods instead of wanting live coral, or just simply a fish that's not readily available in your market. If you're breeding it and there's no wild competition, you're not going to have a hard time selling it. So.
Então, a mensagem que o Matt quer deixar para nós é que existem peixes, como por exemplo o ocellaris preto, né? Não tem mais ninguém que exporta os animais selvagens. Então, por isso que ele conseguiu manter o valor do mercado. Então, trata-se de tornar um peixe que não está acessível. Assim como, por exemplo, o Harlequin Filefish dele comendo ração. Então, é isso que se trata a questão da criação, né? Em trazer peixes que estão deficientes no mercado, né? Em que não trazem no mercado. Quero agradecer imensamente, Matt, a tua presença por estar aqui conosco. Pessoal que está nos assistindo, se vocês não são inscritos no canal, se inscrevam. E, Matt, muito obrigado por estar aqui conosco. E, cara, é um grande prazer estar te conhecendo. Eu já te falei, já fico muito feliz de poder estar conversando com pessoas como tu, simpaticíssimos. Teus filhos também são pessoas simpaticíssimas. E muito obrigado por estar aqui com a gente. E espero que nós tenhamos outra oportunidade de conversar. Matt, once again, I want to tell you that it's amazing to be talking with you. As I mentioned to you, I've followed your work for a long time, so it's a big pleasure. You are quite nice guy. The chat was amazing. Your kids, AJ and Ethan, are also really nice, really kind. And I really hope that we have an opportunity for us to talk again. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.